Well, now we're going to turn to the University of Michigan, where the school's president is speaking out about the athletic department's handling or mishandling of the Shane Morris injury that unfolded on national TV Saturday. Listen, even if you aren't a big football fan, you probably have seen this video. The university president, he releasing a statement this week saying that he is disappointed with what happened and that the system failed. You see the hit there. This after the quarterback, Shane Morris, took a vicious hit to the neck and head area and was seen wobbling off the field on Saturday. Literally, his teammates had to keep him from collapsing at the time. School officials later said that Morris, in fact, suffered a mild concussion. But he came back into the game on two separate occasions later that game. And now there's a lot more supporting evidence to talk about concussions on the gridiron. We're learning about former Kansas City Chief Javon Belcher. You remember that tragic case where he killed not only his wife, but also himself right in front of his coach and his general manager in Kansas City. Reports out this week show that Belcher may have suffered from CTE, a progressive degenerative disease of the brain. Symptoms, they include depression, aggression, disorientation, and as we know, Belcher was obviously a very troubled man before killing both the girlfriend, as I said, and taking his life. And if you want more evidence, a new report published in Time magazine shows that the brains of 76 of 79 deceased NFL players who donated their brains to science showed signs of a degenerative brain disease, again CTE. Currently, more than 4,000 former NFL players have filed a lawsuit, some accusing the league of fraud for its handling of concussions. I want to bring in our legal panel here, some familiar faces. Jimmy Kasuris, criminal defense attorney in Manhattan, lecturing at New York Law School and a visiting professor at the University of Birmingham in England. Doug Von Noyes, founding partner of Carson Von Noyes, focusing on corporate misconduct, and selected, I think we all know this, as part of the Legal 500, one of the most influential trial lawyers in our nation. In fact, there's a billboard out there. Michael Kaplan joins me, sitting shotgun. He focuses on personal injury, representing persons with traumatic brain injury caused by negligence and medical malpractice throughout the country. Mayo Bartlett, attorney, former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office. Mark Furnish, professor at Brooklyn Law, and, as he likes to remind everyone here, the only one who's argued before the Supreme Court.
I don't like to remind
Yes,
anyone.
you do. Oh, please. Yes. Michael, we see the situation playing out at Michigan. We've seen it play out certainly at the NFL level, and report after report say, wow, this is bad. You've been closer than this, and you've seen the numbers. Is it worse than even the general public imagines? How much traumatic brain injury is going on? Let's start first on the playing fields.
Well, I say football is a concussion delivery system. There is no way that you could make football safe. And what's happening is that in professional football, in college football, and indeed even in high school football, there is a complete denial of all the risks that are attendant to this game. And we see it. We see it in what happened in Michigan. They talk the talk, but that's about as far as they go.
And that's with, I'm sorry to interrupt, 100,000 people in the stands, national network television broadcasts the game, announcers saying, what are you doing, letting the kid back in the field? And it still happened at the highest levels.
Well, because this is profits over safety. And when you ignore what happened to this young man on the football field, you realize that either they don't have a clue and nobody's paying attention to what the medical profession is saying right now, or they really don't care.
Okay, now here's where I get to where I'm confused about this. At some point, you got to get insurance, okay? And forget even at the Big Ten or the SEC, at the most highly profitable leagues of college where the revenues from broadcasting, et cetera, you could argue would sustain even a high premiums you'd have to pay. And the NFL, obviously, its own money-making machine. But how in the long run do smaller colleges, high schools for that matter, or Pee-wee football afford the premiums that are going to get attached to this? Because every study that comes out shows, and I was talking to Doug off camera, they're even telling our kids that, hey, you play soccer, and I got 3 kids who are doing it too. There's medical evidence, you know, that it can happen there, let alone in football or hockey or whatever the sport can be. How is this affordable long term?
It's not going to be affordable, and don't kid yourself, the insurance carriers are looking at this, and they're looking at what has happened with the NCAA suit. And they're looking at the fact that although the NCAA settled their lawsuit, these players are still going to be able to sue their individual schools on an individual basis for their repetitive injuries that they sustained in playing not only football, but any type of sport. So the insurance carriers are truly worried about this. And what you're going to see is they're not going to give coverage. They're not going to provide it to these schools. It's going to be as simple as that.
But we talked about it in the back a little bit. Isn't there a degree of assumed risk in this? I mean, it doesn't take an avalanche of medical evidence to tell you that big, muscular men ramming into each other at the highest speeds is going to cause severe, permanent, debilitating injury. That's why my parents would never let me play football when I was a kid. I mean, I understand there's more evidence coming out to corroborate this, but intuitively we know Rex Ryan says it's 100% casualty rate in football. So you go into this with your eyes wide open, don't you?
But there's a standard of care now that when a player gets injured, it's incumbent upon those that are responsible for his or her safety to do the right thing and remove that individual to play so that they don't get any further injury. Don't allow that player to go back to the field and get re-injured.
It's easier to see that, though, when you're looking at what happened in Michigan the other day, because clearly, you know, the quarterback could barely stand up and they had to hold him up. But one of the bigger issues is I coach soccer. When you're dealing with young people, and it's not so evident. I mean, Michigan characterized it as a mild concussion. I can't imagine that's a mild concussion. But when you're looking at a 9 or 10-year-old kid, or maybe even worse, a 14, 15-year-old kid who doesn't want to come out and they're not wobbly, but you notice that maybe they were stung for a minute, you ask them if they're okay. You're not a medical professional. If they say they're all right, I think that presents an issue. The other issue is that you're asked to sign a medical waiver before you can play any of these sports. So your parents have to do it if you're not able to do it yourself, and if you're able to do it yourself, you sign that waiver. So it's an informed consent, even though generally we all would agree that the kids and the parents probably don't really understand what they're giving up.
Well, the worst person to ask if you're okay is the person who just had a concussion or a brain injury.
Oh, especially in sports where they want to be out there because they want to perform because they're scouts. But are the insurance companies, and in the pursuit of profits, are they going to ask for better, more cogently effective waivers so that they get around the insurance problem?
Yeah, it's an adhesion,
and the rule is and must be, and it must be enforced. When in doubt,
Take them out. Yeah.
keep them out. It's
But
as simple
here's
as
the
that.
thing,
Happened
though.
at a place like Michigan.
No, but here's what I know.
In Michigan, it's
It's a little obvious, but here, Michael, is I know what they're going to do. I know this happens in high school football, okay? Now you get a baseline test before the season starts. So they see where you are right now. So at least you got a standard to measure. Can you hold a school liable? And I don't care if it's high school, college, or even the pros. If the person isn't showing symptoms of concussions, later on, can he go to Michael Kaplan's office, knock on the door, and say, I got problems here. I can't handle light. I can't handle sound. They let me out there. To Mark's point, when does it become assumed risk if there isn't negligence that they didn't see symptoms? That was negligence in Michigan. When it's not obvious, where does the line start and stop where you say to the client, you do or you don't have a case?
well, you have to look at the big picture, and each case obviously is going to be looked at differently. But if you have a child who's complaining of headaches, if you have a child that is off balance,
How about 10 years later if they say, look what happened to me? Is there a certain point where you say, yes, this was the causation of it, but there was not negligence in that they allowed it to persist over that season or seasons?
the question is, did you allow this child to go back before that child should have gone back? When you allowed this child to go back, was there proper medical clearance? Did you retest this child? We started with a baseline test. Did you look at tests again and give them another impact
But
test?
a lot of these injuries are not perceptible. No one perceives it. So you have
Many
kids
of
on every field that have a concussion, and nobody
I
knows.
want to jump to
The
a break because I
NFL's
got to it, but I'm just going to tell you from a guy who consumes this stuff on Saturdays and Sundays, right, and played a little while I was younger, this is America's pastime. We live and breathe this stuff. It's the most, and I can tell you from a broadcasting, the only thing that will guarantee ratings is football on Sundays. That said, I don't understand how this can sustain itself in 90+% of the places that play football. I just don't
Why
get
don't
it.
they just emulate the NFL's concussion protocol all the way down? I mean, you see it from
But
watching
even
now.
so, you don't think the NFL is going to face more lawsuits for this?
Depends
It's
how
gonna
much how they
happen.
can manage it. I mean, the concussion protocol is so aggressive now. I mean, you saw it with Calvin Pryor, the Jets rookie, the first week in camp. They have him, being looked at doctors and sitting there out.
We're going to keep going to this one. I want to go to break because I got more for you guys. When we go to, when we come back, we'll have more. But go to Facebook now and Twitter and sound off on our questions regarding the concussion concerns. Are you personally thinking twice about letting your kid not just play football? How about soccer? How about hockey? Are you having second thoughts? I see Doug nodding. When we come back here, a story in the New Yorker about a teen who lost 3 years of his life behind bars on Rikers, and has us asking our legal panel about the challenges surrounding the Sixth Amendment. It promised us a right to a speedy trial. But is that realistic? We'll be right back after this.